clinical psychologist right now. I specialize in neurofeedback. I also have a psychological practice as well, that I treat people for personality disorders, ADHD, traumatic brain injury, and anxiety.
Incredible.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing it?
About 5 years now, 6 years now.
Okay. In terms of the arc of that last 5 or 6 years, where you're at right now, is that somewhere that you thought that you would be 5 years ago, or did you take some turns and twists along the way?
Definitely the turns and twists thing, but I didn't know that I would be in this field, as a career. A lot of my life was kind of just meandering and filling out, this area, maybe trying this area, and then it kind of led to this from a series of events.
So walk me through maybe a little bit of those series of events, but what's the thing that drew you into this 5 years ago?
Well, I didn't get driven into the field 5 years ago. It was more 10 years ago when I was working as a police officer in Palo Alto and in California. And, I was pretty messed up from my time in the military. And I was going to psychotherapy and meeting with a psychologist, total amazing guy, badass. He got shot down in Nam, had shrapnel in his knee. And he really kind of inspired me to do things that were very contrary to what I thought would heal. And we can definitely get into that. But really, it was just going through the therapy process myself, going to the VA and getting help with my brain injury, which I'm sure we'll get into. Those kind of things. Seeing that experience and how it really helped me, it kind of made me really see how therapy and the whole field of mental health is really amazing for a lot of people, and it kind of drove me into that, just from my experiences from the military, what I was suffering through, and then getting the help finally after a while of struggle, and then seeing the benefits of that help really made me like, wow, this is a great profession. This is something that can really change lives. And then that kind of just led to a series of experiences and going to training and school and to where I am today.
So have you ever had prior to that any sort of therapy, psychological, any sort of exposure to that, you personally?
No. I mean, I definitely came into this field because of what I experienced in my trauma and my brain injury, addictive substances, things like that, substance abuse. And all of those experiences really made me realize how valuable our mental health is and how many tools and resources there are to actually help you get to a place that you're very functional and you're solid,
The therapist in the Navy who impacted you, this guy, right?
Yes.
What was it about him that really stuck out to you that made you think that he could help you?
Honestly, I feel like so his name was Michael, and he worked at the vet center, and he was working at the VA, and he was a vet. So he's used to seeing vets all day. And he was so sure of himself and knew who he was. And I was very attracted to that. And so it made me really value what he had to say. And, this guy was shot down in a helicopter and took shrapnel in the knee. It messed up his knee really bad, his leg. He became a doctor. He struggled through things and he became very successful. And he actually, which is really funny, one of the things we'll probably talk about later is I had a major fear of waves because of my time cleaning up the disaster from the tsunami in 2004. And I was terrified of waves, dreaming of them every night. And he says, Matt, why don't you just go to Capitola, California? There's a surf class going on where vets are helping vets that are missing limbs learn how to surf. I think you should try it out. And I thought he was crazy. I'm like, dude, I drove around the bay to get to you to avoid the bridge. I'm scared of the ocean, ironically, even though I was in the Navy. And so, that's not going to work. And he says, I just want you to go. And so I did. I went into, it's called Cowell's Beach in Santa Cruz. They have like really long, small waves, almost like Waikiki. And there were a bunch of veterans that were literally missing limbs, arms, and they were trying to learn how to surf. And I was a volunteer. I went out there to help them. And me just seeing these guys that were in worse shape than me, like who knows what they went through. conquer their fears and become brave, it just, I don't know, it did something to me. And me teaching them how to surf and being a part of that, it really, like, my fear never went away. I just got a lot braver. And I will say that after that, I just started surfing. Like, I started surfing really big waves. I got tumbled and churned up a lot. They threw the ocean threw the worst at me, and I pushed through it. And so I developed a love and a passion in the thing that I feared the most. And it really was powerful for me. So then I went back to that doctor and I was like, hey man, what else you got? Because that was incredible. Like, whatever you just did for me, I feel like it's healed me so much. And then that developed a great relationship from there, and it kind of really motivated me into that field.
I don't know why I keep thinking of Good Will Hunting. I don't know if you remember that movie.
I love Good Will Hunting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Great
that's
acting.
but it's like, who is someone from outside of your normal network and realm that can speak to you in confidence? Because you said that word confidence, and we'll talk about that. That's very, very important, because where does that confidence come from? But someone who speaks to you in confidence and in love, because you need to have something going on in your life to make you push someone like you to do something that they're terrified of.
That's right.
The confidence and the love this mentor comes into your life, is speaking over you, and is forcing you to do things that have had tremendous impact on your life. Is it the work itself of being a therapist, or is it really that person who shaped you to want to say, this is a road that I can go down?
I think it's a little bit of both, to be honest. I mean, I really do think that sometimes God puts people into our life that have something to say, a message for us that we need it right when we need to hear it. And for me, at that period of my life, this really pivotal downturn in my life, God put that guy in place, and it really, really shaped me. And as long as I had eyes to see and I paid attention to it and I heard what he had to say, it really made a significant impact.
I really just wanted to understand who this figure was for you, because for me, I've been impacted by people's competence. You know, I've met mentors and had people who've spoken into my life where I'm like, man, I'm blown away by how good they do the thing that they do. Okay.
Right.
And then I've been impacted by people that just love me. You know, like, it's not the competence that draws me, and it's their love and their commitment to me. They may not even know me that well, or it could be both. It sounds like it's a little bit of both for you. And I'm assuming this person, his name is Michael, you said?
Yeah.
He's made a major impact on your life and is part of your story, really.
Big time. And it's what he suggested, the thing itself that was very healing, but it's also how he suggested it. I would not have done what he suggested if he didn't suggest it in the way that he did.
What way did he say it to you?
He just suggested something to me that sounded radical and crazy, but he was so sure of himself that it made me feel like I could actually do it. And he would compliment me along the way in therapy and kind of nudge up my ego a little bit to make me feel like, well, actually I am this resilient guy. He would spin things in therapy when I would complain about something. He's like, well, actually, let's look at it this way. That's actually a sign that you're extremely resilient. And so he would change the way that I had framed my mind, because my mind before that was very black and white. It was very much, you know, I'm a failure, I'm not smart, I'm not capable, you know, burn the world down kind of mindset.
Right.
And he would really take everything I would say and reframe it to make me think of things differently, that would just open up my mind to other possibilities. And then when he would shock my system into recommending something that I was actually terrified of, it led to this position where, you know, maybe I should do this. And I did. And it changed my life. And I love surfing to this day because
that
of that.
Is awesome. As someone who's tried to surf unsuccessfully many times,
Yeah.
I think there's definitely some skill there, but it's a psychological thing. And I think if you look at life in general,
Right.
life is a psychological game. Life itself, right? And
You're right about that.
We don't really give credit to a lot of the people, and I've touched upon this with the whole movie analogy, teachers, mentors, parents, whoever. A lot of times the confidence and the love is kind of reshaping your mind. It's reforming your mind. It's reframing your mind to bring you to a place that you've never been to before, which is, I think, the most important role that any significant person could play in your life. As a father, right? You have kids.
Yeah.
I have kids. Who do I want to be, right? For my children. As a parent, I want to be someone that can do that with love and with confidence, because that's what we respond to. It's just human nature. We respond to love and we respond to confidence. Now, looking at this person who you were receiving therapy from, Michael, what was your therapy like there? Like, did you go in for PTSD? Did you go in for anxiety? What was your...
Yeah. So a few different things. I went in for anxiety, substance abuse, and traumatic brain injury and post-traumatic stress disorder.
Well, let's take a step back. That's kind of a lot. Okay. Anxiety, substance abuse, brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder.
Right.
Is there a way that you can give me a little bit of an overview of your life? Because those are 4 really big ones.
Yeah. Let's do that. So, where do I go from there? So I would say, let's go back to right before I decided to join the Navy. Okay. And that's kind of led me into those conditions. And so, when I was really young, had a pretty normal family, felt loved by both my parents. It was really, I would describe it as a great childhood. My parents divorced when I was 12, actually at 10, I think. And my father was a pretty severe alcoholic. That led to a lot of the issues that led to the divorce. So alcohol really came in the way of our family being what it could have been. And I have this distinctive memory when I was a kid where, I'm leaving the house to go catch up with my dad, who's on the way into the car with his suitcase. Dad, where are you going? Where are you going? Why are you leaving? As he's walking out on our family. And that's probably the time my mother agreed it was time for him to go. And he told me to get out of the way and called me a dummy. And, I know people have been called worse in their life, and, that might not sound too severe on the surface, but for me as a kid in that very vulnerable moment of, whoa, a big change is happening. What's happening? And like, that's the word he chose. It really impacted me. And, I was a kid. I really struggled with reading growing up. I was on phonics. My grades
were you hooked on it?
I was hooked on phonics. I wouldn't say I was hooked on it. I was reluctant on phonics. but I really struggled. And I never really thought much about it because my dad was always so supportive of a father, and so was my mother. And that really made me question things. And, in life, we don't always get to pick what sticks with you from what people say.
Yeah.
And that definitely stuck for some reason. It defined a lot of my life. And it's funny because I've talked to my dad about this today. He's a great guy. He's got, he's a solid dude. And he doesn't even remember saying that, And
he doesn't remember.
He has no clue. He doesn't remember he said that. And I was like, my whole life was built off that. but I've obviously forgiven him about this, and I've gotten over it. But, what was really interesting about that still never left me.
That never left you.
It never left me. The feeling that I was dumb.
Why did that strike a nerve? Was it that? Like, you always thought you were dumb? Why even intelligence? Like, what, because my dad called me a dummy, I'm sure, and maybe I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
It didn't impact you. Like, and so that's the point, is that it's, for some reason, whatever reason, because maybe I struggled, it's like almost something clicked that made sense. Oh, you actually are dumb.
So you believed it.
I believed it in that moment.
And you accepted it wholeheartedly.
I didn't. It's almost like when I was on the phonics, I was struggling with school. I ignored those things.
Right. Yeah.
But then when that happened, it's like there was a click inside me, and I believed it. And that's where that belief started. This deep-rooted, irrational belief that began and started, which probably I'll get to later, that I wouldn't change for the world, and I kind of wanted around. Yeah. But the point is that he said that, and it led to a cascade of events. It led to, me not really trying in school, getting into a lot of trouble. In my teen years, I got arrested out of high school. I got arrested another time for drinking in public. And
Do you mind me asking what you got arrested for the first time before the drinking in public?
yeah, there was like an old house in the woods. I lived in a rural area, and my friends, we busted up a bunch of windows and went in and demolished the house. And somebody owned it. It was their land. They didn't live there. But deputies found out. My friend at the time left a flashlight.
And how old were you?
Fingerprinted it, traced it back to this. I don't know how they did it, but they found out it was us.
Wow.
And then they pulled us out of class in high school and put us in cuffs.
Oh, no.
Yes.
You got arrested in front of your classmates?
In front of my classmates.
And how old were you?
Oh, gosh. This was 10th grade.
Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty
wild.
Pretty scary.
Yeah.
And so that happened. And then later, still a social deviant, playing around with drugs, not going to school. I skipped more days of high school my senior year than they actually held in attendance, like more than half. I would say, not more days, but more than half. So I had to go to summer school to graduate and all these different things. My grades were really horrible. And, the day I was supposed to ship out to the Navy, I had a huge party and I got arrested for drinking. And I shoved a cop onto another cop, and it was not good for me. And so I was kind of heading down this path where I really didn't try. I really didn't apply myself. I really didn't believe in myself.
Mm-hmm. And it's no wonder why, because you solidified in that moment.
Yeah.
That I'm a dummy.
I'm a dummy.
Which means I'm worthless.
I'm going to act as if that's true.
Yeah.
And so then after that, after high school, I was kind of out of options. I applied to colleges. I got into a couple, actually, believe it or not. But I chose instead to go in the Navy because I felt like the structure, the routine, the discipline was kind of what I needed. And then, my family has a very long history of being in the military. I mean, we have draft records going back to the French and Indian War with the colonial militia. Which is pretty cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I part of me wanted to continue that tradition from patriotism. I really liked that idea. So I served in the Navy, and I loved a lot of it. The Navy was a great experience for me. It's ironic because I signed up for the Navy September 9th, 2001.
Really?
And right after I signed, swore in, the World Trade Centers got hit. So
that's incredible.
So immediately, the boot camp became, we're galvanized, getting ready to go into war. And so my experience in the Navy was wartime. And I got to travel a lot, experience a lot of things. One fun experience was, finally after our second tour in Iraq, we got back, and George Bush landed on our aircraft carrier. And I got to shake his hand. And
what did his hand feel like when you shook it? Was it smooth?
It was very soft, actually. It was a soft hand, but it's firm shake. So it
kind of makes sense.
He's like gentle, warm, and approachable, but hey, he's got a spine.
I love that. One of the biggest things that I've always tried to aspire to personally is to be a velvet brick. You ever hear that analogy?
No. Tell me about this.
No, keep going.
Well, the crazy, it was funny because I got a photo of George Bush about 1 inch from his face. And the Secret Service had to pull me off, but I still have the photo to this day.
But
which is fun.
I'm trying to just picture you. You have a camera, obviously, you're taking a picture of George Bush. You're meeting him. This is a big moment.
And as I shook it, I took a photo of his face.
Did you just surprise?
He did.
But why did you have to go an inch from his face?
He kind of looked back, and so the photo is a surprise George Bush.
That's awesome.
Face.
Can we get that photo?
I'll layer that over the video if we can.
We have to. We literally have to do that.
Add that. Yeah.
But that's awesome. I mean, that is things that most people don't get to experience.
No, and on that night on the fantail of the ship where I was a gun mount captain, so I was in charge of a 50 caliber gun mount. I'd be doing my watch. And his entire house, his cabinet came, and they were all smoking cigars. Mm-hmm. It was either Dick Cheney or Donald Rumsfeld that gave me a cigar, which was really cool. That's really I was too young to know that who was here. But it was a really cool experience. So I had a lot in the Navy that was really fun, and I wouldn't take it back for anything in the world. I had a lot of really decent friends, but things started to kind of take a turn towards the end of my service, my 4 years. So. That's when Bush landed on the carrier, that day when the ship finally went into port, all the sailors were excited. We were finally home after like the longest deployment for a ship in 31 years. So we were fiending to get out and have fun. And so we're all in our uniforms. Back then they wore uniforms out in town. We're all in our uniforms or Class A's, and we're all out drinking at the bars. And if you could imagine any city that a carrier, aircraft carrier, stops at is going to be inundated with sailors. I mean, there's 7,000 sailors on an aircraft carrier, and every bar is just, they're everywhere, and so you're going to probably make a lot of locals upset or angry. And so for me, I was out drinking with my buddies. I had duty the next morning. I had to get up really early. And so I was out drinking, and then I was like, hey guys, I got to go. I got to work. So I left by myself to call a cab. And this is up in Seattle, in Washington. Our ship was docked in Everett, the base there. And so here I am in my uniform, a little intoxicated, and I'm combing through the alleys looking for a cab of the city. And I encountered a group of local guys, and they had clearly been drinking, and one of them asked for a cigarette, and I said I didn't have one. And then he's like, give me a cigarette. I said, I don't have one. And I called him a name, which probably wasn't a good idea. And man, that started a sequence of events that I couldn't change or get out of. And I got beat to a bloody pulp. And
really,
they in the Navy, you have these Class A uniforms, the white ones, and there's like this neckerchief that is tied. It's hard, and you can't break it open. And so they grabbed me by my neckerchief and spun me around like a helicopter, and I ended up landing into a bus stop pole, and it hit me in my shoulder, and it crushed my shoulder and dislocated it. And
no! Is that in the beginning of the fight?
That's the very beginning.
Okay,
I thought I was doing pretty good, and then somebody grabbed me from behind and did that, and then I lost my balance. I landed in the thing, and then I was like, I'm down, and then they just started kicking me in the face, and all I remember was boots hitting my eye over and over. And I'm like, stop! I'm down, and then I woke up in the hospital like hours later, and
that's unreal.
It was
so
it was pretty brutal.
You were getting kicked in the face with boots. Okay. Yes. You remember that part?
I remember that part.
And then you were out.
And then I was out.
Okay.
And it ended up being where my sinus cavities were crushed, all on this side, all behind here. They fractured my orbital socket, and they crushed half of my humeral head. The ball socket here was crushed. And so the end result of that was, which is funny, if you're in the Navy, it's like they give you a couple ibuprofen and tell you to suck it up. And my face looked like cauliflower. I mean, I looked like unrecognizable. All my buddies were like,
yeah, I could
imagine.
Mad
as unrecognizable. So I got light limited duty for, a couple of months until I healed up. I had some cracked ribs. But, and I got honorably discharged. So I didn't get medically discharged, but, I went back into service. But the problem is my arm kept dislocating. And so I had like 50 dislocations in my arm.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it was 46. I counted 46, and it would my hand would hang below my kneecap. It was so bad. And I'd put them in myself, and because I got tired of having to go to the ER every time. And so I was like, I got to figure out how to put these things in, and and so
was this before YouTube or after YouTube?
This is before.
This is before.
So 2010, when YouTube really got
YouTube, you were able to put your shoulder back in.
Yeah,
by feel. That's amazing.
I had to like relax my shoulder, even though I was in enormous pain, and lean against the wall, and it'd pop in every time. But boy, the pain! It was so painful all the time. And then I would get like 10 to 15 sinus infections a year, and severe sinus, because my sinuses just wouldn't drain. And so I was miserable. And so then, you flash forward towards the end of my service. In 2004, I got out in 2005 in September. So in 2004 in December, we were on tour. Our ship was out, and we were in Hong Kong, and we felt an earthquake in Hong Kong. And it felt like a couple seconds. Didn't feel like a big one, but my friends and I were all like, was that an earthquake? And it was. But what we didn't know is that we felt that 1,000 miles away, where the epicenter was in Sumatra, Indonesia. And it was the largest earthquake ever recorded. It was a 9.3, 9.4, something around there, to where it even triggered Richter scales in New York City. And so my ship quickly responded, because we were the closest large vessel that could provide immediate humanitarian aid and relief. So we worked in conjunction with a lot of UN and other militaries. The Japanese military was there, the Indonesian Navy was there, and we went to Banda Aceh, Indonesia, which is the epicenter of where the damage was. And this is a city about Banda Aceh. It's not the biggest city. It's about 60,000, size of Santa Cruz, California. And they lost like half of their population in about 10 minutes.
That is
About
crazy.
over 20 something thousand people. And so for a couple days leading up to getting to the area that we were going to provide humanitarian relief, we were seeing bodies, we were seeing animals, we were seeing rooftops, and it was pretty nasty. And so, I wanted to volunteer. I wanted to be a part of that and work with other navies and militaries. And so I volunteered. And what that meant was I got to go on a helo, SH-60 Seahawk. I got to go, and every day we would, fly back and forth to the shore and, open up crates and pallets that were dropped by our bigger helicopters, so the locals could have food and water and things like that. And it was really good. But what I found is that I couldn't unvolunteer once I did it. And the reason that I would have unvolunteered was, we were there for 6 months doing that, day in and day out. And, a 9.3 earthquake has aftershocks. And we're talking 6.5, 6.7. And these are big earthquakes that are just aftershocks. And so, we'd be there and it's almost like seeing the bodies as you're coming closer to the land. You start to realize how real things were and how delicate life is. And so I would go there and we would help with the cleanup effort, and we would help with giving these people food. And then we'd have an aftershock. And then everybody would look and panic and feel like another wave was coming.
Wow.
And so it was a couple weeks to a month or two of those aftershocks of like thinking another one's coming. And so that kind of did something to me. And I started having really serious dreams, waking up in sweats every night of a tsunami, where I would feel like my legs were stuck in mud and I couldn't run from it. And so I would wake up right as it got to me. And it really terrified me. And it didn't go away for years and years and years. And so that experience really changed for me. And it's funny that we talked about this doctor, because he also helped me with that. He was like, well, think about those people that were there. Like, how resilient are they? How brave are they? What did they go through? And it makes me remember, like, talking to some of those people. A lot of them had lost their entire family. And I would see them laughing at moments, at getting food. They were just grateful to be alive, happy to be alive. And it just kind of turned things on its head for me and made me think of things differently. So I get out of the Navy, that my time was up in September. I get out of the Navy and, I go try to work for my buddy and his family. And I'm doing pretty good at that. They decided to sell their house that I was living in. I was doing a lot of work in exchange for them. And I ended up homeless because I didn't have anywhere to go. I called my dad, and bless his heart, he was like, well, go to a shelter. They got food and money. And I didn't want to come home. I didn't want to surrender yet. I wanted to try to make something of myself. So, this is in California. I moved down to California and in the Bay Area. And, I ended up homeless because I chose not to go back home because I didn't feel like there was any opportunity for me there. That's the place I left. I was into drugs and I got in trouble. There wasn't much industry or material. There wasn't much opportunity there. I felt like the Bay Area had a lot of opportunity. I just wasn't able to tap into it. And so I was homeless for 6 months, which doesn't sound terribly long, but when you're actually homeless, it's a very long time. I remember going to different gyms to try to, pretend that I'm an interested customer, but I get a shower. I go there just to shower and get clean. That's after like 2 or 3 weeks of being not clean, and I get a shower. And then I'd find out who worked there. So I'd cycle through staff and different names
Wow.
But the things you do to
Yes.
try to make it happen.
You're someone in this present day that like it blows my mind to hear that. That's what you went through.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
mean,
but this is your story,
it's my
right?
story.
This is your story.
Trauma to triumph.
From trauma to triumph, which is, hey, if I could pray for anyone, a best friend or even a stranger, I would pray, because life is traumatic in and of itself.
It can be, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to have this level of difficulty. You could have this level of difficulty, but it's all traumatic in many, many ways. And all of our trauma it hits us differently.
Yes.
Like, if I could pray one thing for anyone, even my own children, go from trauma to triumph. And it's just so crazy listening to your story in this way,
Yes.
because these are things that I cannot personally relate to. I could never relate to that.
Well, I mean, and you don't have to, because everybody has their own story. Mm-hmm. But it's learning how to translate trauma to triumph that did it for me. And I was trying to figure that out. I was the kind of guy that had to see how far bottom went. I was the kind of guy that had to learn from making 1,000 mistakes before I learned the right way to do it. And, that was my dad telling me to go to a shelter was probably the best thing he could have said to me in that moment, because maybe I would have been overly dependent in my life. And I was financially irresponsible in the Navy. I asked my dad for a lot of handouts. He did help me. So he was probably like, come on.
Yeah, that was his breaking point, maybe.
And
okay.
so, but that's probably the best thing I needed in that moment, to be honest with you. And it hurt, but in the moment, it really changed things. It's like, okay, I guess it really is up to me to figure this out.
Yeah.
And being homeless, it makes me, I have such a heart for homeless people, because it's never just that they were out of luck or they didn't have opportunity or they would ever choose anything like that. It's usually a combination of mental health and circumstance. And for me, it was that, like, the brain injury thing was major for me. Like, I wasn't even capable of holding a job at that point. Like, just, I was overly impulsive. It affected the impulse centers of my brain. I was getting in fights all the time, like physical altercations. I was aggressive.
And even after you had suffered a brain injury because of a physical altercation.
That actually made me more likely to have physical altercations, because I was so, it changed the chemistry in my brain. Now I know it happened because I'm a psychologist, but back then I didn't know. And it took me a while to understand what that impact actually was, and the trauma and being easily triggered and startled and hypervigilant, and the impulse control, which led to the substance abuse stuff later. Like, all these things kind of compounded, which almost made it where I had no choice but to be homeless with the kind of personality that it had created. And so it took me a while to kind of get out of that funk. And when I finally found the bottom, I realized that, like, okay, it really is up to me. I need to figure this out. I need to get ahead. And what that led to was me knocking on doors of every business that I could find and say, do you need help? Do you need help? Do you need help? I'll help you. I'll do whatever. And I eventually got a job as a waiter in the parking garage, above the parking garage that I was actually living in.
Wow,
which is
really
ironic. Yeah, in the corner of a parking garage is where I would stay. And I got a job there serving.
Yeah.
Everybody would go home at the end of the day, like, let's go party, let's go hang out. I'd be like, later, guys. I'm already home. And they'd all leave, and I'd
Were they
stay.
jealous of you in that respect, because you had the least distance to travel to get
my
home?
commute was immediate, so it was really nice. That part was actually nice. But yeah, I laugh about it now, but it was,
There was nothing to laugh about in that moment.
it
I'm
was
sure.
very
Right.
difficult.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I look back at that now, and it's just a part of my story. A buddy of mine got out of the Navy, and he moved to Santa Cruz, which was really close to where I was at the time, in Los Gatos in California. And we connected, and he's like, hey, you can stay at my parents'. They have a fifth wheel RV on our property. You can stay there as long as you want. And he really helped me out. And I got meals every day from his parents and became a part of their family, and they really took good care of me. And I joined a local carpenters union, and found some jobs, and worked my way up to, a studio, kind of a single room, then a studio, and And then it just kind of, I kept building, and I never stopped from there. And I'm still
Wow.
going to this day.
People coming into your life and offering that hand.
Yes.
That's the turning point. But it's not only that they give you a hand. What is it that actually makes you say, I believe in myself, when someone extends their hand to you like that?
That's a really good question. Coming from the time with that doctor that became a mentor, and, you know, I started surfing and doing that regularly. And it was interesting because I started facing my fears. And, you know, I didn't know what bravery actually was before. My whole life, I thought being brave was not being scared. And I'm scared of waves to this day, terrified, terrified. But what I found though was that people are ridiculously strong, more than they even realize. And I just started going. I just started going and surfing big waves, not knowing what I was doing. I almost got in a lot of fights with Santa Cruz locals, which was a separate thing. But I just started surfing these big waves and facing my fears. And I felt like it was like a backpack, right? Like when it's heavy at first and it's so much weight, the fear. But then I just kept going and walking. I just kept walking with that backpack. And eventually I got stronger and stronger and stronger. It felt lighter, but it wasn't. It was just that I got more brave. I got more strong. And seeing that and feeling that was huge. And so I you know, and I love surfing because it's just such a great metaphor for life. Like you can, when a wave comes, you can fight it and resist it, you know, or you can surf it. You can learn how to use its energy and go and guide along it. And that's what I did. I harnessed the energy. I didn't try to control it. And that was just trying to figure out in my own life is like, I need to stop trying to force things to happen. But I also need to let go of things. And when I'm not letting go of things, and I'm not trying to force things, the natural rhythm and cadence of provision in life starts to continue. And that's what it did for me. And then, so I went to the VA, and I got help with that doctor. And then I ended up getting some brain scans of my brain because, you know, my mind, I noticed my mind wasn't where it needed to be. I couldn't remember anybody's name right after. I know that sounds normal, but this was extreme. You could tell me 5 times and I wouldn't remember it. I couldn't remember what I had for dinner that day, for breakfast. I couldn't remember what floor I was on at the appointment that I had. I couldn't remember. Um, I would brain fog with. I met Bush, but I would say Clinton was president.
Wow.
My mind was
So
really damaged.
out of the ordinary stuff.
And that was actually the thing that the psychologist that was testing me said that really shocked me. That like I thought I was normal for the most part, but here I am, you know, coming out of homelessness. I have a substance abuse problem. I was drinking every day. I was doing some drugs, some harder than others, and it just burning the candle at both ends. And he says, you know, who's the president? And I say, oh, but Bill Clinton, saxophone guy. And he's like, yeah, we're almost, you know, this is almost to Obama at that point. And so that really shocked me. And it's like, okay, I really need to do something about this. And so I did 8 years of neurocognitive therapy.
8 years.
8 years of just brain training, exercises. We had a plan. I'd come in every week and we'd work on it just to getting my memory. But the big thing was working on my impulse control because it was really out of control. The drinking, the fighting, the just everything.
And just to stop you for a second.
Yeah.
Tell me what that feels like to not have control over your impulses.
Well, it's like this. It's like a metaphor of a horse and a rider. The areas of your brain that are responsible for impulse control, they're in the older part of our brain. You know, the neocortex, the part of our brain that is responsible for decision making and planning, that seems to be developed later. There's this part of your brain that's developed earlier in the womb, in utero, that is one of the first parts of the brain that's developed. It's called the limbic system, and that part of the brain is like a horse. It's a very powerful animal, and it's impulsive, you know. And the frontal lobe is more like the rider of the horse. And for me, it was like the horse would see a mouse and just take off running or buck the rider off. The rider didn't know the triggers of the horse and how to control it. It was a more powerful animal, and it didn't know how to regulate it yet. Um, and so that's kind of the difference between, with ADHD, the frontal lobe is not as developed as it should be. The limbic system is overly active and overstimulated more than it should be. And so then the person has a hard time binding the impulses of that stronger, more powerful animal and navigating the little nuances of what causes fear or not. And so for me, that was very much what I was dealing with. Is I was dealing with ADHD symptoms because my frontal lobe was actually damaged from the impacts of the boots hitting my face in the military, and my limbic system was overactivated from all the traumas that I had experienced. And so on paper, it looked like I had severe ADHD. I couldn't hold a conversation for more than a couple seconds. I couldn't focus on anything. Everything was really difficult. And so me going to the VA and doing that cognitive training over the years, and part of that included neurofeedback, which we'll get into later, which I eventually, when I started that phase of my life of rehabilitating myself, I actually landed a job with the VA as a police officer. I got to know the people there, and I was coming all the time, and I was looking for jobs, and I was like, well, hey, I used to love wearing the uniform. Like, do you guys hire? Do you have cops here? And like, what do you do? And so they hired me. And so I went to police academy there, and it was a struggle, man. For me, it was a struggle because my memory issues were so bad that if something would happen, I'd go to an accident or a fight in progress or whatever. I'd have serious issues with the sequencing of what happened in the events. I'd have big gaps. And that actually helped my therapist at the VA be like, okay, tell me about what happened, what you remember. And it actually helped us narrow down what parts of my brain were actually the most deficit. And turns out for me, it was what's called visual short-term memory. I had the part of my brain that was damaged had damage to the back of my brain and the frontal lobe. So I had a lot of trouble encoding what I would see and remembering it. I would remember everything I heard, but not what I would see. And so we started targeting that area. And then over time, my superiors were less worried about me as an employee because I was like on the verge of getting axed because of my cognitive deficits. But then over time, I started getting better and sharper and more with it. And they started noticing. I started noticing. And meanwhile, I'm going to therapy with that other doctor that's really helpful. And all of these things started kind of coming to fruition. But the big thing for me is this part makes me think about how I got into my life purpose, which is a psychologist, a neurofeedback specialist, specializing in the brain. In the 8 years that I got called there to the locked psych ward at the VA as a police officer, I never had to use my pepper spray, my baton. I never had to really escalate force. I always used my words. And I was always able to connect with these vets because guess what? I was a homeless vet. I had severe PTSD. I was hurting. I was in pain. I got it. I'm still working through it. I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still not where I need to be. Man, we were on the level. They got it. And so I was able to like connect and like get to these guys' hearts and just be a part of their world and their life for a minute. And I just saw them go from here to here. And I did that over and over and over and over again. And I think I saved lives. In that way, their lives, a lot of them that were suicidal and wanted to hurt themselves, just by being present, understanding, and stepping into their world was so healing for them.
The two things that it's thematic in a way in this conversation is confidence and love. Is that like, are you embodying that right now in this?
Big time, big time. And this is where I connected dots. The act of helping and throwing myself into situations where people were worse off than me and helping them, man, it just warmed my heart, and I felt so grateful to it. And I think gratitude is a verb. It's like, it's to be felt, it's to be done. And to me, I felt purpose. And so when I would go to the psych ward and I would de-escalate these people And we had officers that, if they come on scene, that we're going to be going hands on and wrestling match and they're going to pepper spray. And so for me, just to always use my words to connect, it's like, I need to pay attention to this. I think God is speaking to me here. I think God is telling me like, hey, Matt, you need to use your pain. You need to use your experience and you need to help these people. And then that led me to a path of like, okay, this is not my career. This is something I'm doing for money, but my career, my passion, my life is what I'm finding is helping these people, walking into their lives and helping them figure their lives out. And so I started doing that. I started going to school. And meanwhile, I'm still thinking I'm dumb and not intelligent.
See, the things that your dad said to you when he pushed you aside and called you a dummy, that's still this big
It's still weighing on me,
life.
and it was still there, and I didn't think I was enough, and I still felt stupid. But again, I had developed grit, and I knew what I was capable of. I knew that I was strong. I knew that I was brave, and I knew that I was tough at that point. I had got out of homelessness. I knew I was tough, and so I was like, okay, even if I am dumb, so what? I'm not going to quit. And I didn't. It took me a little longer to go through school and do things, but, over time with the cognitive therapy, I got sharper. I got more back to where I was before I got kicked in the head multiple times. And I started getting, really good grades and then, amazing grades, and so, for an example, my family moved here in 2020 from California. And as we were moving, I was finishing up my doctoral dissertation in psychology. And moving to South Carolina, they had different regulations for, what would qualify a psychologist to get licensed here. So I found out that I wasn't going to be able to get licensed here, even though we were moving here, as I'm doing my dissertation for my doctorate in psychology. And so I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'm going to figure this out. I know I'm tough. I know I'm willing. I'm still feeling dumb. But I'm going to go. I'm going to do it. And so I went to Liberty University and picked up a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling because some of the coursework, probably like 4 or 5 classes, is what South Carolina wanted to see that were different than the one California had. And so I'm working full time. I'm under supervision, seeing clients, 40 hours a week. I'm finishing up my dissertation, which is probably the hardest thing I've ever done. And I'm going and doing a master's degree simultaneously at full time, all of this at the same time, and still being present for my kids and not like abandoning my family and still honoring those duties. And so like, even then with all those experiences, and I finally graduate and I get, the state approves me in South Carolina. They're like, hey, you can be like a psychologist here, that you have enough, you did enough, you're good. And I get my license, I passed my exams. I still felt dumb. And I'm like, what is this? But then I realized that, the things that happen to us, the trauma that we experience in our lives, the problems that we have are just our purpose and our meaning in disguise. And that's why I wouldn't change what my dad said to me when I was a kid, the attack that I got in the military, the tsunami trauma that I had cleaning up that effort in the Navy. I wouldn't change any of that because all of that really shaped me and drove me. It's my fuel. And man, how far would I get without my fuel? Like, what kind of guy would I be? Who would I be? I wouldn't know. I wouldn't recognize that person. And I really like who I've become from all that stuff. It shaped me in a way that made me a person that I really care about and I really love. I love this big dumb guy.
Well, for the record, I love this big dumb guy too.
Yeah, thank you.
At any point in my life, I would say at some level, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Either identity, purpose, or meaning. The hardship that's there really, like, it just kind of amplified one thing. It was purpose.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Right. How to find your purpose is what I'm hearing is a question there. It's like, what is it that people do? Like, clearly my example was the purpose was thrust upon me. Right. And it makes me think of Shakespeare's The Twelfth Night, where he says, some leaders are born, others are made, and still others have the role thrust upon them. And I think that could be layered with purpose, right? Like, you know, purpose, you can make your purpose, you can create it. Not everybody has the luxury of having trauma. Some people have pretty good lives overall, and they're still like without purpose. And how do we find that? How do you mean that? I think it can be found in religion. Me personally as a Christian, I find a lot of purpose, a majority of it through, my faith in God and Jesus and what that means to me. But there's layers to it. And I think that, it reminds me of this story that I love hearing. This is one of my favorite stories. It's that imagine you were standing before the crater before you were born, okay? And, you're kind of choosing your life. And you're telling the creator, you're like, I want to be brave. And the creator says, oh, you want to be brave, do you? Well, in that case, I'm going to have monsters that are placed before you and villains in your life that are going to teach you and scare you that you're going to have to decide to be brave. And then you pause for a second as that emerging soul, and you're like, well, I want to be, I want to be kind. I want to be kind. And then the creator says, okay, that's a good one. To be kind, I'm going to create people that hurt you and create pain in your life and suffering. And so that you're going to have to merge through that and find out what kindness actually is. And you say, well, that sounds like a really tough life. Can I just have a good life? And the creator says, well, just as we measure a blacksmith by the quality of steel, I'm not going to measure you by the fire and the forge it takes to create you, by what you are at the end. And that, my son, is why a good life, the one that you want, is actually a hard life. And it makes me realize that, character, creating your character is a difficult life. You cannot have good character and have an easy life. It just doesn't coexist in the same space. They're mutually exclusive, and so taking those experiences for me, the evidence of who I was to become was thrust upon me if I paid attention. And I paid attention, then I was really good at helping people and connecting into their sorrow and their story and their experience because of my own, helped me get there. And that really led me into a place where I knew what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I went into the field of psychology. I look at my experience in my life, and I'm like trying to figure out, where can I grow and what can I help in? And I have to align that and juxtapose that with the purpose that I feel like was thrust upon me through circumstance in my life. And that was helping people. And so I'm constantly trying to push the envelope and grow in my industry and what I'm doing. And that started with me doing like cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectical behavioral therapy, which is more for like borderline personality disorders. And trauma. But I'd still get these clients with trauma that those therapeutic modalities would still very much fall short. And then the patient would become desperate and go the pharmacological route and try to find medications or things that would help them alleviate any of the symptoms that they're experiencing. And I just didn't see that as a fix, because the moment they got off those medications, everything would show back up. And so here I am trying these therapeutic modalities that are evidence-based, and they're helping some people, but not everybody. And I think that's what makes somebody a good practitioner, a practice in therapy, is that you're trying to figure out the angle that you can go to, and you're trying to push for it to where you could help every single person, and you're hungry for that. Because if you're not hungry for that, you're doing your patients a disservice. Because I'm settling into, this might help you, it might not. But
yeah,
I want
it's a job for you at that point.
Right. And I want to find something that's like that will help every single person that I meet, that nobody comes to me and leaves without being better. And I know that that's a tall ask, and that's not reality.
Thank God for that tall ask.
But I think that as a mental paradigm, to have that is what's really good for my patients. And so I'm hungry. I'm hungry for the healing. And so what that leads to is like, well, what actually is working for these people? What makes a big difference? What changes lives? And there are a few things that I've found that really make a big difference. And just some of the basics. I like to cover the basics first with my clients. It's like I don't really meet people that are depressed, that are sleeping well, they have a good diet, they've got a robust social life, they're exercising regularly, and they have some purpose and meaning in their life.
Mm,
You know, if any of those five things are missing, it's a cheap ticket into depression. And
mm.
so uh,
Can you say those five things again?
yeah. So it's sleep, diet, exercise, social life, and purpose.
Okay.
And if any of these five things are not intact in your life, there's going to be the bridgeway to suffering. Social life can include a lot of different things. It can include like love and belonging, relationships, intimate relationships, friendships, things like that. But we do need to have some level of human contact. Exercise, um, clinically, that's significant for your body, what that does. There's so many different things that get activated when you're exercising that are really good for your brain and your body's physiological state, that if you're not exercising, you're not going to get those benefits. And we know about that. That's clearly documented in science. And the diet, eating food that's freshly killed if you're not a vegetarian, or stuff that's alive, fruits, vegetables, things like that. You're taking that energy from that plant that is life. It's actual life, and you're eating it and you're consuming that life into you. It's sustaining your life. You have to eat life to sustain life. And so if you're eating stuff that's dead, processed, all of that, where's that going to lead you to? It's not going to lead you to health or growth. We have to eat life to grow. It makes sense. And so those things kind of line up. And then the last one was purpose, which we talked about a little bit, and kind of how to find that, which it can be thrust upon you, can be born with, or you can create it. And a lot of people, they're actually stuck with the latter. It's like you got to figure out how to create your purpose and your meaning.
I'm glad you said that. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for me, I blended that. I had the thing thrust upon me, but I'm like, I want to create it through trying to heal people and help people the best that I possibly can. And since I've been working with clients, cognitive behavioral therapy can work for most people, I feel like, that come into my practice. They get progress, they grow, we challenge these negative thoughts. That's what we call a top-down approach. It means that we're identifying the thinking patterns that create problems, and we're challenging them. Like if I have this irrational belief that when I'm younger, from my dad and that experience we talked about, that I'm dumb, and I feel inadequate, right? That's an irrational belief. I need to name that belief, and I need to name it and identify it. When I name it and identifying it, I'm stepping out of believing it, and I'm looking outside and saying, where's that coming from? What is that belief? That's an automatic negative thought. That's an irrational belief. So I've already gained power and agency outside of that thinking mode. And then what do I do with that? Well, evidence showed that if I challenge it with some kind of evidence that's not true, it helps a little bit, but not all the way. What helps all the way is when I actually start behaving the opposite. I act as if. I fake it till I make it. That's actually not just a social platitude. It's actually a reality. If I am acting as if, this is not true, then my subconscious, and the subconscious, we can get into that later, but that is like an ocean of your consciousness. And your actual consciousness is just a cork floating on the ocean of your subconscious. The subconscious makes up most of our behaviors and beliefs and values. And so if I act as if, my subconscious pays attention to that. It's like, wait, he's not doing the status quo. What's going on here? And if I keep acting as if over time, it becomes second nature. It becomes programmed and conditioned into my mind, and things change. That helps a lot of people. But what I've noticed is that when things are bottom up, so that's top down. That's like your outer cortex, your frontal lobe, working on that. But when things are ingrained in your limbic system, deep in these subcortical regions, they're not so easy to change just by thinking your way out of your problems. You can't think your way out of generational trauma. You can't think your way out of like deep trauma that happened to you. You have to find other things that can actually get into those areas and change things, right? Like, I can change the rider by training the rider differently, but I can't change that more powerful animal, the horse, with cognitive behavioral therapy. I have to do a different approach.
Yeah.
And so that's what led me in that journey. It's like, what changes these deeper seated traumas that these normal therapeutic methods are not actually helping? And I found, I believe it's like 4 different therapy approaches, maybe 5, that really make a big difference of working on changing the nervous system permanently, where you don't have to keep taking medication. I think medication is great. I'm not going to downplay the effectiveness of medication. I have schizophrenic patients. I've had multiple personality disorder patients, dissociative identity. I've had patients with severe bipolar disorder. They absolutely need to be on medication. There's no other route for them in that moment. But there are paths that they could take that can lead them out of eventually not having to be on those medications. And to me, it's like, it's functional medicine, right? Before traditional medicine, it's I want to get to the core of what's causing the issue and heal that, rather than just treating the symptoms. And so that's where I was at. I was trying to figure out, like, what actually outside of medication can heal these people that are having these deep traumas, that just trying to change the ways of their thinking is not working. And what that led to was just different journeys of trying to figure things out. And I feel like I found 4 to 5 different therapy approaches that actually do that. That significantly change deep-rooted trauma. And the thing about trauma, I'll say this part, is that what people don't realize about trauma is you have this area of your brain called the hippocampus. And the hippocampus is the area of your brain that remembers the who, the what, the why, the when, the where, the how. Pretty much all the context and details about memories. And when you're going through something, your hippocampus is encoding all the time. But your hippocampus is surrounded by cortisol receptors. And as you know, cortisol is the fight or flight hormone. We actually need cortisol. When you wake up in the morning, you have a spike in cortisol. It's what animates the meat suit. It's what gives you energy. Hormones are energy. So it gives you energy, and we need it. But too much cortisol, not good. So the hippocampus is surrounded by these cortisol receptors. And when you're having a stress and anxiety around a memory, something's happening to you in that present moment, your hippocampus is trying to remember all the details. But then it's getting flooded with cortisol, and things start to get messed up. The who, the what, the why, the when, the where becomes the who, the what, and the other ones are missing. And it could be an interplay between all those. So what that ends up happening is when somebody gets triggered, like in that moment, their brain, their hippocampus doesn't know that, it thinks that whatever happened in the past, the trauma that's triggering, is happening again in that moment, because it lost the timestamp. Because it's surrounded in cortisol receptors, the hippocampus loses key information when there's too much cortisol flowing into it. And so that's the seed of all trauma. All trauma is the seed of that, is that my way of encoding memories and remembering things is damaged and misrepresented because of the amount of cortisol that was flooding through the part of my brain that's remembering things.
And this is really important for people to hear, because we all have these times where it's like, well, what's going on? I can't figure it out. Maybe you can't. But the prayer or the hope is that there is someone else out there who can figure it out. And that's where the empathy, the love, the confidence comes in.
That's exactly right. And you want to find somebody that's hungry to figure that out for you.
Yes.
Because they're going to try to solve that problem. They're going to try to walk with you through that and figure it out, whatever direction that goes. And let's think about it like this. Like, trauma is encoded in this way. Let's say that I'm going to visit an elderly family member, and they're on their deathbed. And as I'm walking in the hospital hallway, there's like shiny floors, and there's like, LED lights, and and I'm walking down this long hallway. And as I'm walking, I hear the beeping, like the flat line that, that in the movies you hear, like they just passed. And then all the people are rushing in this room, and I'm encoding this memory. It's a traumatic moment because I'm walking to see this family member. They're at the end of the hallway in this room, and that's where it's happening. And that sticks with me. I don't know. I don't get to choose what my brain remembers, what my subconscious encodes.
Very important.
So then, let's say later, 6 years later, I'm walking down a long hallway that has LED lights and a shiny floor. And my kid's classroom is at the end of the hallway. And out of nowhere, I get an anxiety, a panic attack. Why? Because in that memory of that trauma of going into that room with my family member, walking down that hallway, my brain had so much cortisol flowing into it that was only able to remember the shiny floor and the LED lights. And so guess what happens? When I'm in an environment where there's a shiny floor and LED lights, I have a panic attack that I don't know where it's coming from. What is this? Why do I have panic all of a sudden? That's how trauma works. And really what it is like, I was trying to figure out how to heal what I went through and I take from what worked for me, but then what worked for me didn't always work for my patients. So then I'm like on this journey and figuring it out. And what I've found now, I'm at a place where I feel like I have a good toolkit of things that actually work for 90% of my patients. There's like 4 to 5 things that I've found. And so one would be like, genetic testing, kind of figuring out what your genes are actually doing at the genetic level. If you look at genes that have to do with neurotransmitters, that would be like the COMT gene, the MAO-AB, and you don't need to know those genes, but basically they have to do with breaking down and producing neurotransmitters like dopamine, norepinephrine, serotonin. And so you have these genes that they either are not methylating properly, means they're not, it's like, think of it like a throttle. If a gene is not methylating properly, it's like a throttle is stuck at like 1 mile an hour when it actually needs to be going 70 miles an hour on the highway. Or it's going 100 miles an hour and maxed out when it actually needs to be going 35 miles an hour through the city. So these genes are not turning on or off appropriately when they need to.
Okay.
And that leads to too much serotonin, too much dopamine, too little serotonin, too little dopamine, too much adrenaline, epinephrine. And so that can really cause a problem with somebody's brain not working correctly. You figure those gene anomalies out, you can probably supplement for them. You can do different supplements to help support those areas. And that makes people feel a lot better. It makes a big difference. And genetic testing also goes into like what diet is best for your own genetic code, what types of exercise are best. So it carries into a lot of other areas. So that's one. The second one would be, psilocybin, which is like an emerging thing, magic mushrooms, right? The Department of Veterans Affairs, Harvard, not Northwestern, Yale, and maybe it is Northwestern. There's been a couple of different, Johns Hopkins. There's been several different prestigious universities, as well as the VA, the largest healthcare organization in the world, have been doing a lot of studies on psilocybin in the microdose amounts. So not like you're tripping out and you're taking this, it's a microdose. So you take a little bit and each day for a few days, and then you take a break because you get a high level of tolerance very quickly. And then you cycle back and you take some more, and then you take a break and take more. So it seems like that's had a significant impact on rewiring people's brains.
And that's traumatic events, or that's anxiety, or just across the board?
Any of the above.
Any of the above.
That we talked about. Right. I wouldn't say for bipolar, borderline, personality disorders. I don't know about the data on that, but for like attentional control, for trauma regulation, rewiring the nervous system, I'm talking significant changes. But it's not legal right now, especially where we're at in South Carolina. Maybe in California, there's a couple cities that have made it legal, but basically that rewires what's called the default mode network. It's a region of your brain that includes multiple different cortical areas that when it's overly activated, it means that you're ruminating over and over. You're constantly worried. You're in an anxious state. Your body is wired for stress. That's the default mode network being overactive. It really calms that down. Ketamine assisted therapy, that's another one that works on the default mode network activity. It's kind of expensive. It does work. It can work, but it doesn't work for everybody. But it is a big process. I mean, that's a pretty powerful drug that can really assist people. But it's kind of like shocking your nervous system into changing, and it makes a big difference. I've had, mixed reviews on it, but I've had a lot of patients that have had significant results. The ones that it works for, it is life-changing. So there's that. So we've got the genetic testing, we've got the psilocybin, we've got the ketamine, right? EMDR. EMDR is another thing. That's really effective for veterans because they don't even have to talk about their trauma. We can just do a series of like eye movements in a certain succession, a certain pace, under these scripted protocols, and we can have them kind of visit their stress internally and think about it, and it can rewire their nervous system. It can desensitize their brain for stress. It's pretty fascinating how that works. I can get into it if you ever want to.
And what does EMDR actually stand for?
So EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And what it does is that when the brain is in a state of calm and relaxation, when you're moving through space, your eyes are kind of naturally scanning horizontally, like, oh, that's pretty. There's kids playing over there. There's like a swing set over there. There's a tree over there. Oh, it's beautiful. Look at the sky. Your eyes are scanning. But if I'm in that same park and I hear a big, twig or branch snap, like a big animal, like in a bush behind, what are my eyes going to do? They're going to go tunnel vision.
Right.
I'm going to get a flood of cortisol. My pupils are going to dilate to let in more light. I'm going to tunnel vision to that spot. And then my lungs, I'm going to shut down my digestive tract because I don't need to digest food when I'm about to be food. And my blood flow is going to go to my lungs, my muscles, and I'm going to get it ready to fight or flee. And so she found that when veterans are triggered and when they're thinking about their trauma and things like that, that when we couple those eye movements, like I'm actually making you do these movements while you're visiting your trauma, it's incompatible with the reaction that the trauma has.
That's unbelievable.
So it kind of like hacks or short circuits the brain to thinking, hey, you're moving through space. You're actually calm. You're doing good. You're calm. You're fine. There's nothing wrong while you're visiting the trigger. And simultaneously over time, that heals people. But the effects of that's like 40%, 45%. So it's not like as high as I'd like, but it does help people. So again, with ketamine, it's like the people it does help and it does work for, significant results, significant changes. But the big thing that I've discovered that it's literally like the secret gemstone of the holistic world that no one knows about, which is neurofeedback. And it's mind-blowing to me because neurofeedback is about 70 years old. It's been around for a while. But it's obviously the past, 5 years, it's really become something that more people need to know about. Only because we're integrating with AI and we're developing these protocols that are getting significant results. Let me give you an example. Neurofeedback, which I'll get into in a minute, is like 86% effective in ADHD. So for example,
wow, really?
86% of people that go to neurofeedback get significant changes, noticeable, marked improvements, noticeable.
I'm assuming that's way higher than alternative methods.
So it is, but it's also about it's on par with Adderall or speed.
Okay.
And so if I take amphetamine, I'm going to get some results because I'm taking a very powerful drug, right? And Adderall is basically amphetamine. So and amphetamine salts are not terrible. There are some people that have such severe ADHD that they actually probably need them right now. But it's a bridge. It's not a lifestyle. It's a bridge. It's to get you from one place to the other. And so people are taking this as a lifestyle. They're giving their kids this as a lifestyle. Would you give your, I mean, I know you, so I know that you have you know.
Do you know me?
I do know you. Yes, I know you have 3 daughters and 2 sons. And so your daughters or your son, right, Tyler, are you going to give Tyler a cup of coffee every morning, a cup of black coffee?
No, Tyler is wired to be on black coffee 24 hours a day. His natural personality, him in particular.
Right.
But no, but
the image of that,
yes, absolutely not.
like
because
it's a stimulant.
I know him.
Well, the reason that's a bridge is that if I stop taking that, it goes away. I'm back on the other side. So the moment I stop, I lay off the Adderall, I'm back to where I was. It doesn't fix. It's not a fix. It's treating the symptoms. And so, but the reason that we found that, hey, give Tyler a cup of coffee, watch what happens. Give your child Adderall, watch what happens. They calm down. Why is that? It's because the area of your brain between the frontal lobe here, you got your frontal lobe here at the front, and then on the side we have the parietal lobe. So the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, this part of the brain right here, is usually impaired with ADHD. Okay? So when the brain has an area of impairment, what ends up happening is the areas that are around it overactivate, overfire. And so they're overstimulated to try to compensate for that area that they can't communicate around properly. So if I have this area that's impaired, all these areas are going to be overcompensating to try to make sure the communication links are still valid through that area.
Interesting.
What that leads to is, lots of energy. I can't sit still. I can't rest because that area is overactive.
Never understood that. That's so clear.
When you take a stimulant, the brain knows what to do. The brain is so smart that it's like, I'm going to take what I need and put it to where it's needed immediately. So if I take a cup of coffee or I take Adderall, which is speed, it's amphetamine, I take that, the brain's going to say, put it here where it's impaired.
Well,
so then that
balance things out a little bit.
So then that area speeds up, and all the areas calm down. Globally, the person calms down. They're able to focus.
Wow.
And filter out distractions. And so that's what that does. But the problem is you stop taking that, it goes right back to normal.
Which is the bridge. Right,
it's
because the bridge is a temporary solution.
That's right. So the ways that I found that help with that is neurofeedback, which I'm going to talk about in a second, and the genetics. Is identifying at the genetic level, what are the genes sending the signals to that create the neurotransmitters of telling them what to do. And a gene might be saying, hey, produce a ton of dopamine. We want lots of dopamine going, way too much dopamine, right? And maybe that's way too much. And so fixing that at the genetic level is very healthy. But then neurofeedback comes into play, and this is where the magic happens. So neurofeedback basically is, I am training the brain to be self-regulated and balanced. Think of it as, so you have these brain waves. You have alpha, beta, delta, gamma, theta waves. Okay, so when you and I right now, while we're talking, you're hearing what I have to say, you're absorbing the information, you're in beta waves, right? And beta waves is a pretty big range. You're probably at the lower end of beta. When I'm at the lower end of beta, it's called SMR. When I'm in SMR, I'm focused, I'm engaged, I'm listening, I'm hearing, I'm processing things. Now, if I have too much beta, I'm anxious. But it's funny because when you get even higher than beta, you get into gamma. And gamma is when you get into peak insight and eureka moments, like clarity, like great idea, brilliant ideas. That's gamma waves. They're more rare. But most people right now, you and I, are in SMR, which is low beta. When you're in a very calm state, but not like deep thinking, like overstimulated active thinking, you're in alpha. Deep meditation or early sleep, theta waves. Okay. Deep sleep, delta waves.
So there's this huge impetus in modern culture of the compulsion. I mean, maybe that's the wrong word, but we want to veg out. I personally feel like when it's 11 o'clock, my kids go to bed, I'm in my room, I want to veg out on YouTube content. And by veg out, I mean, just take a break where I think I'm being relaxed, but I'm really not probably. But what state is that?
That's actually really interesting. Nobody's ever asked me that before. And really what that is that's alpha theta. And so when I'm in a relaxed state, but I'm not actively thinking, but I am paying attention.
Right.
That's alpha. And so that's kind of like what you want to target when you're doing neurofeedback for somebody that has anxiety. So
really?
That's why people with anxiety, they go
alpha
for
theta.
things like that. Alpha or theta. That's right.
Oh,
Yeah, we
wow.
have actually protocols that are designed to make that happen more often. I can give you an example in just a minute. I brought a
Yeah,
device that
absolutely.
can help with neurofeedback, but let me tell you a little bit about what neurofeedback is. So neurofeedback in a nutshell is basically measuring your brain waves and identifying what your brain waves are doing and identifying irregularities. So for
Okay.
example, let's just say, right now you and I were talking, your beta is dominant because you and I are talking, you're processing, you're really thinking,
Mm-hmm.
your brain is firing at a certain uh, a certain frequency, but beta is dominant. So, but right now you still have all the other brainwaves. There's none that are like inactive and don't exist. You have delta, theta, gamma, all the other brainwaves are still working, but one is usually dominant.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I like to think about it is, let's say your brain waves are like an orchestra in your brain, right? And you have this orchestra, you have the flutes, you have the woodwinds, you have the brass instruments, you have the cellos, you have all these different instruments that are all working together in tandem to make this beautiful sound. But let's just say all of a sudden you don't have any flutes, right? That's a problem because there's this beautiful part that's supposed to work in the orchestra that's not working.
Hmm.
Or let's just say that the cello is so much louder than the rest of the instruments and we can't hear anything else, just the cello, right? Well, we need to kind of calm the cello down. We need to bring the flutes up. So that's what neurofeedback is. It's like looking at your brain and seeing what areas are overactive and underactive. So
Hmm.
I'll have you like come into my studio. We'll put in Brain Fit Studios. We'll put a cap on your head, and I'll look at your brain. I'll say, hey, just think about nothing. Just keep your eyes open, and I'll look at what your brain's doing. Okay, now close your eyes, and then I want to look at what your brain's doing. All right, count backwards from 200 by sevens, and it's a cognitive task. I want to see what your brain's doing under load. And so I'm going to examine your brain in those three different conditions, and I'm going to see what areas are overactive and what areas are underactive. And then I'm going to say, hey, this guy has got a brain that when he's trying to concentrate and focus, it's got so much theta waves, which is, as you remember, is almost when you're sleeping, like calm and deep, deep relaxation. But you need to be focusing. He's got all these theta waves showing up. I need to like down regulate those and help him focus a little bit better. I'm going to bring up beta so he can actually focus more. And so that's all it is. It's nothing goes into your brain. We're putting these little sensors and these little electrodes on your
Mm-hmm.
brain, and we're actually just seeing what the brain's doing. And when your brain is doing what it's supposed to be doing, we reward it. And the rewards, there's different ways to reward. Usually it's like, you're watching like fractal images and they're really beautiful and they're big and they're, expansive, and there's music playing. And when your brain's not doing what it's supposed to do, they go away. The sound
Okay.
stops. But when your brain is doing what it's supposed to do, you see the images. The brain really likes to get rewarded. So when the brain is doing what it's supposed to do and it's getting rewarded, it likes that a lot. So this is why neurofeedback is so effective. It's because
Mm-hmm.
outside of, you know, um, medications and outside of like mindfulness and meditation and all these different things, this is a modality. This is a treatment method that actually trains your nervous system to regulate itself.
Which
So,
is the key.
which is the key. And so after about 20 sessions, 30, serious situations about 40, after about this many sessions, the brain permanently is in a different state.
Mm.
It knows how to regulate itself so much better. The nervous system calms down. It's not triggered like it's supposed to. The mind is focused and intense on one thing. It's not like constantly distracted. And it really puts the brain in a state where it should be in life. And that's what
Wow.
it does. And
That's
it does it
crazy.
consistently
Yeah.
and it does it long term.
That's why I'm so drawn to the idea of neurofeedback in and of itself, is because we know long term, right? There's no way that you can go against the natural order of things and win. And I think progress happens, it only happens when we're going with the flow of how things are meant to be.
That's right. Yeah.
That's the beauty of
I
neurofeedback.
love that. Yes.
Yeah.
You've nailed it. And this is why, like, more people need to know about this and how this works. And I'll demonstrate for you in a moment, just a quick version of what this looks like.
Yeah, I'd love to see.
But it is the missing piece of therapy that more practitioners need to know about, more people need to know about that can actually heal them. If I were to tell you, let's just say that we have a child that has severe ADHD, okay, and medicated right now, using medication, and it's so severe that we're actually going to family therapy, and he's going to individual therapy. How much is that family spending on therapy? It's so much money that there's so much time and effort that they're doing it. Now, I'm not going to say neurofeedback doesn't take up a lot of time, because typically the way brain training works is that the more often you do it and the closer together you do your sessions, the more effective it is. I can probably heal somebody, 2 to 3 times a day in 5 days than it would take me once a week in 6 months. Because the brain
That makes sense to me.
the brain just needs repetition as frequently as possible. And so usually where we land is like 2 sessions a week. But it's one of those things like, hey, if you could come twice a week for 20 sessions, 30 sessions, 40 sessions, depending on the severity, and be done with the problem, actually have a chance at whatever this is going away. And I'm not even shying away from severe illnesses. We're talking autism. We're talking, borderline personality disorder. We're talking, serious PTSD and trauma, like serious things. If we're saying, hey, you got a chance at like 20 sessions, 30 sessions, 40 sessions, this being done, or at least very long term, wouldn't you want to do that as opposed to all the effort that you're going into to taking medications and having to stay on top of that? I mean, a pill is quick, it's easy, it masks the symptoms, but the second that you're gone from it, it goes away. And just finding the right medication dose is so challenging, because then you're having to try different doses, and how much do I do this dose, and let me be on this for a few weeks, and let me switch to a different type because that wasn't working. It's a painful process for people.
It's terribly painful.
It's painful. Neurofeedback can help with that. It can heal that. It can cure that. So you want to get into these things that there's really no money to be made by Big Pharma. If I could say it like that. I know that's controversial, but
that
there's
is
not a lot of money to be
but...
made, because it's like, I can't keep you at this level of where you're just enough feeling better that I can keep you at that level. I don't want you. There's no money in a cure.
I'm not going to fault people for trying to help other people, but I will fault people for creating a bridge that leads to nowhere. Okay. And that is the main problem with the pharmaceutical industry. It's limiting healers in the thing that they're called to do. It's giving them tools that don't fulfill the purposes that they wish that they had. I mean, if you think about it really, I don't know if I have ADHD, because we are living in a society, in a culture that's overdiagnosed in a sense, but also underdiagnosed, because I think a lot of what we're seeing is the multiplication of just so many different issues with social media and with a whole bunch of different things going on in our culture. So I think I have ADHD. Right. Do I know that for a fact? No, but I think that I do. And I think there are a lot of people, especially the younger generation. I mean, I'm 39 years old. I didn't grow up with a smartphone. I grew up with Nokia and Snake on my phone.
Good point.
I mean, so it's hard for me to know. Why don't you call your daughter Lily right now and see what she thinks?
Right now?
Right now. Call her right now.
Hi, Lily. Hi there. Hey, I'm calling you from a podcast.
Oh, very nice. What are you talking about today?
Well, we're talking about ADHD is one of the things. Can we ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Lily, thank you for being available on short notice. I appreciate that. Especially because I see a broom in your hand, which means you're hard at work right now.
Yeah, she's working hard.
Which is always good. We're talking about ADHD. I almost asked your father to diagnose me, which I'm not going to do. That would be wrong. But we talked about social media and all of the various noise, I guess, that we have going on in our world around us. And I did not grow up. You're 17. I'm 39. I grew up in a completely different climate than you. So how would you, as someone who's 17 years old, navigate through understanding if you have something that needs to be addressed through neurofeedback or through other means versus something that's just normal to a 17-year-old?
I think a lot of people still aren't super like talkative about it, but the main difference is that there's like a wider like array of tools, like resources available to people.
I see that as you have more assaults against your mind because you have more information, and the information overload is a good and a bad thing, right? It's a good thing because you have the ability to seek help for yourself. It's a bad thing because the informational overload perpetuates the problem. And I see you, Lily, as someone that would be, I guess, willing to seek on your own tools and information that will help you. What would you say to someone who's your age that may or may not know that they can seek that information because they feel overwhelmed by it?
I'd say before taking like therapy, I was in the same boat as a lot of the other people who feel like they're not comfortable reaching out. So the best tool to be able to like be comfortable in reaching out to people and ask for help or diagnosis or just like questions that you might have is first just like talking to others, like communication, talking to the people closest to you and like listening to like their experiences. Because personally, what helped me decide to do therapy for like my like more minor like autism and other things was I talked to like my dad, for instance, about like his experience with therapy. And that really helped kind of me get like an idea of what it could do and how it could help. So yeah, I guess just communication with like people around you to know how it makes sense. It really is.
There's 1,000,001 things that are begging for your attention right now as you stand as 17-year-old Lily. But what you're saying to other people who are in your shoes or in your age group or whatever is that human connection is the thing that you're going to find help and healing in. And I think that's something that should be like blasted from a megaphone. And I think that's what you're going to find regardless, because you're going to keep coming up dry. You could watch the reels, right? The algorithm trains you to keep watching the reels. What happens though when you don't find that you're doing better or that you're being helped, right? More reels? No.
I think the only thing about that is there are people that have more severe like ADHD or ADHD that like coincides with other like mental health things, and they might not be willing or they might not have like pre-existing connections that could help them with that. So I think sometimes technology does give you like useful tools in order to like see different options or hear different perspectives. But I think overall what you're saying about human connection being like the most powerful way to find that like help that you may need, I think that's true.
That's awesome, Lily.
Many different people.
See this child? She's so deep.
She is really deep, and I like that. I mean, it's the simple stuff. It's the human connection, because what happens when you...
The simple stuff.
The simple stuff. What's the simple stuff? Lily, we just talked about the simple stuff embodied in someone that your dad met a long time ago through the Navy, who embodied love and confidence. And just those two traits alone were enough to just propel you, Matt, into a whole nother world, into a whole nother being of existence.
Human connection is the pre-existing like knowledge about the person, like knowing how they might react to things or what works well for them, or like just knowing what they might need to hear. That's like the strongest part of like knowing like who to talk to and like who can help you. And like AI is probably just getting the same generic talks like anybody who might like search up a question.
We are basically capitalizing on people that are having issues on social media by making it algorithm friendly, okay? And will that help? Yes, I'm sure the algorithm will find some useful content, some useful clip that will help that person in that moment. But the BS of it all is that it's not going to go deeper than bringing them to the next reel or to the next 10 seconds of content that are going to keep them hooked on the platform. And what I think younger people are noticing, like you, is We don't want to be hooked on the platform, really, in general. We want to be, we want something more than that. Because the people who are trying to keep Lily and anyone who's 17 or whatever, younger people hooked on the platform are the 39-year-olds like me, or the older people who are looking at money, right? And I think younger people are realizing that really, really fast, that it serves a purpose, it's useful, it's part of our life, but it's not the end all be all. And you said it perfect. AI will not pick up on the nuances because it's affirming me. It's trying to make sure that I'm okay. And if it sees that there's an issue or a problem, it'll get uncomfortable because it's not real. It's not going to try to love me. It's going to try to fix me.
That's right. Well, Lily, thank you so much for your young wisdom. It's beyond your age.
It is beyond your age.
I love you, and I love that you're sweeping and cleaning while we're doing this.
It's great to be able to think about this like more deeply.
Well, thank you for sharing. All right. Love you, Lily.
Thank you, Lily. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Charlie.
We're talking about unconditional love and listening to someone, valuing them for who they really are and wanting to hear their feedback.
Yeah.
How else could you do that on a higher level than just separating yourself completely from them as a human being and monitoring their brainwaves?
It heals outside of the ego. And think about the ego. What is the ego? The ego is the 4 Ps, our desire to perform, perfect, please, improve. And so the ego is running on autopilot based off of our experiences in life. It wants us to be better than we are, but for other people. And, neurofeedback cuts through all of that, and it provides healing on a deeper level that makes us not have to have those 4 Ps in our life. It's more about being healing with who we are as a person and not having to perform, perfect, please, or prove. So what happens is the default mode network, the area of the brain that's responsible for rumination, overthinking, constantly trying to perform, perfect, please, or prove for other people, gets deactivated. And it's amazing in that way. And so that's how it helps with the, situations like trauma and anxiety, but it also helps with ADHD, people that are trying to focus and be present when for some reason or another they can't.
This whole neurofeedback space is definitely new to me.
Honestly, most people that even hear the word neurofeedback or an initial explanation of it are a little confused, and it is confusing to a degree. But maybe I should demo it for you. Can I demo it for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
You should demo it for me because I'm a little bit clueless right now.
Maybe this will help. Okay. So what I have here is a headband that has these electrodes. And each of these little things right here is going to identify and record what my brain waves are doing. Okay. So there's like a little amplifier here. Your brain waves it's like an electrical impulse, but it's like a millionth of a volt. It's not very powerful. And so what this is doing is it has an amplifier here that these little electrodes are all picking up a brainwave signal. And so it's actually telling me actively what my brain is doing according to my brainwaves. And like we talked about earlier, the brainwaves are like an orchestra, right? We want to identify if the flutes are being way too loud, more than they should be, or the flutes aren't playing at all, and we need the flutes to play. And so what we're doing is we're putting this headband on, okay? And I'm getting a little, kind of adjusting these little electrodes so they have a clear connection to my scalp. And basically what's happening is right now it's trying to connect to my brainwaves. It's trying to feed into that. And I'm opening up this app that my team is developing. And what this app is doing is basically saying, like, we're identifying the brainwaves that are overactive or underactive. And the ones that are overactive, we're trying to make those come down. And the ones that are underactive, we're trying to make those come up. And how we do that, how we make those brainwaves do what they're supposed to do. And so, for example, I'll go ahead and start at the beginning. So I'm reading this text right here, and my brain's jumping out of what it's supposed to do right now. I'm distracted, I'm talking to you, but let me read.
Okay, so you're reading in your head right now.
Yeah, but now I'm getting distracted. I'm talking to you. I'm distracted.
Okay, so it stops.
Okay, let me focus on reading. And then I'm getting distracted again. I'm talking to you. So this basically what happens is the screen is dimming and the text is stopping scrolling when I'm not doing what the brain is supposed to do.
Okay.
So neurofeedback in essence is it already knows what your brain is overactive in or underactive in. And it's basically trying to reinforce the desired state the brain needs to be in by feedback. And so when you hear neurofeedback, what that is basically saying we need to find some way to reward your brain for being in the state that it needs to be. Let's say that you're watching a podcast, like Stephen Bartlett or something like that, like Diary to CEO, a very popular podcast. The podcast will stop, being bright, and the volume will stop flowing like normally, like it's supposed to. And, your brain doesn't like that. And so when the brain jumps into a state that's supposed to, the podcast will resume. Normal visuals, normal audio, all of that will start to resume. And then the same thing, we have fractals, we have fractal images, like there's these beautiful images that play with classical music. And when your brain's doing what it's supposed to do, the classical music is resuming. But when your brain is not in the state that we want it to be in, the classical music stops, or it gets dim, the screen gets dim, the sound goes away. So the brain is like, wait, how do I continue this? I want to continue this state. What we found is that after you go multiple times a week, 2 to 3 times a week, and you go for several weeks, what we found is the brain actually starts to change over time. And these changes, the brain's like, oh, I want to keep that reward going. I want to keep that reward going. It actually sticks and it becomes permanent. And so then the brain, we've got years of trauma of ingrained in our system that are there to stay that actually start to shift into a desired, calm, conscious, healthy state.
There are people that are listening that have never heard of neurofeedback in their lives.
Yeah.
What has happened in front of your own eyes because of this work that you're doing?
I had this one boy that came in and his dad was kind of distraught. He was saying that his son had auditory processing disorder. They've tried everything. They didn't know where else to turn. They've done therapy. They've done in school care. And he still just couldn't understand sentences. He couldn't understand when somebody would tell him something. He had echolalia, which was basically repeating back what somebody said.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, I told you to do the dishes. And he'd be like, oh, I told you to do the dishes. And he would just repeat back what they would say. And it was very alarming and dysfunctional in the family and difficult for their family. And they had a very hard time with it. And so they had tried everything. And so he's like, I think we might possibly try neurofeedback. A friend of mine had recommended it and they did it. And, the first 10 sessions were kind of rough for him,
mm-hmm.
And neurofeedback, it's kind of like this. It's like the first 10 sessions, it might be like, going to the gym for the first time. Okay, so source shows up in neurofeedback after about 10 sessions of, hey, my son was wired all night. He had so much energy, he couldn't go to sleep. My son had no energy. He was so tired and depressed, like he only wanted to sleep. And so you're going to get these side effects because the brain is doing something that it hasn't done in forever, literally. It's rewarding the area that is damaged.
And that's nothing to be afraid of. It's something
not at all.
So that's like, for lack of a better term, an educational moment.
That's the brain actually being receptive and doing what we want it to do. And so the brain's actually practicing what I want it to practice. And so, of course, you're going to be sore. Of course, you're going to have side effects. Of course, you're going to be overtired, overstimulated. And so overstimulation means that I'm trying to stimulate certain areas. The brain did it too much and it needs to calm down a little bit. The brain automatically wants to jump into things, And so this is normal. These side effects are normal. But then after about 20 sessions, that's usually the threshold where you start, like, everybody has the wow moment. My child is different. They're paying attention. They're focused. They're concentrating on what they're supposed to. They're listening. They're reflecting. Like, I don't know who this child is, but in a good way.
Right.
And so after about 20 sessions, they see that, and then they want to continue. And then the magic is happening, and then the child is noticing it. It's like, so it's a little emotional because the child that I'm thinking about, kids were picking on him, and he was, bullied, and he just couldn't understand his peers. And after about 20 sessions of neurofeedback, this kid was having detailed, articulate conversations with his parents that were above his grade level. And they were noticing it. And they were like, Matt, like, honestly, our only complaint is this kid is asking us so many questions that we're like annoyed by the questions. And like, when we tell him something, it leads to more questions. He's like thinking about it, processing it. And they're like, how is this happening? And it was so unbelievable. And so this kid went from being like, and you have to think about his life. You got to think about his little life.
And how old is he, by the way?
He was 9.
Okay.
And you got to think about his life. He's being like picked on, and other kids are mean to him, and he's like in the outfield, and he's not like, he's just not being valued. And then, like, flash forward, after 35 sessions, this kid is the pitcher. He's the main player on the team.
Really?
He's the powerhouse. He's the power hitter. And all the kids want to be his friend. He's like responding to them and having conversations with them. When he comes into my sessions, I'm noticing, I'm like, he's like, oh yeah, so Lucas was telling me the other day, they had a lizard, and like, I didn't even know. Did you know bearded dragons exist? And he's opening up. It's like we unlock the key to this child to be who he's actually supposed to be. And so he, he's like the star of the team. And it was just, his parents noticed it, and they were so emotional seeing this experience. Like this healed my son. This made my son who he's supposed to be, and it was so powerful and unbelievable. And that was the moment, like, for me, like, this actual avenue of mental health is not a joke. It's real. It actually works. And people need to know about it. And here's another example. So when I launched this neurofeedback business, I advertised that I was going to do neurofeedback to my practice. And I said, hey, any therapists want to try this? I'm going to give you 10 free sessions. 10 free sessions. Anybody wants to do it, you can try it out, see what you like, whatever you think. And I had 3 therapists. I had multiple therapists, but I only took 3 come in. And they did 10 free sessions. All of them continued to 20 to 30 sessions on their own. But all of them had miraculous changes in their anxiety, and their overwhelm, their focus. It's all significantly increased. But I had one that was a cancer survivor. And she had, she had cancer in her lymph nodes. She had some major issues right here in this area here. And when they went in to get rid of the cancer, they took out her thyroid gland, and she was on medications for the rest of her life to maintain thyroid balance. But she had neck issues because they worked and operated in this area that affected the muscle.
So they took out part of her thyroid, and she had physical
symptoms
because
as a
of that.
result. And so the
musculoskeletal stuff.
The thyroid is like a butterfly right here. And so it's kind of like a shape of a butterfly. And so they took all that out. So it's a big surgery. And so she was the therapist. And for most of her therapy practice, she would have to like...
What kind of therapy did she do?
She was like a psychotherapist like me. She was not an LMFT, but an LPC, like a licensed professional counselor. And so she would see people with cognitive behavioral therapy, various other modalities. And so she had to have a high-backed chair. Wow. And so when she would see people, she, as a therapist in the industry, right, a big part of being a therapist is like listening fatigue and being on. And so if I'm working with 8 clients back to back, that's 8 hours that I need
Oh,
to
yeah.
be focused and attentive to your needs. So she had to have a high back chair. This was her compensatory strategy. And she would like sit there, with a little pillow and a neck, and she would just like sit there and look at her therapist, all day long, and all that stress and pain. And so hours of doing that, her neck was just wrecked. And so that was her big complaint. She's like, well, I have anxiety in general, but then I have this neck pain and it won't go away. So I did neurofeedback with her. I did 20 sessions, and we trained the areas of her brain that were overstimulated. There was several areas that were overacting more than they should. We brought them down, right, by reading her brain waves and rewarding when her brain's doing what it's supposed to do. And her neck pain started to go away, and significantly, where she was able to go, 3 hours without supporting her neck, 4 hours without supporting her neck, all day without having to support her neck. And then we identified, like, hey, guess what? That trauma, that ordeal that you went through, that was mental, stored in your neck. You were mentally storing that trauma in your neck, and neurofeedback freed you from that.
That's unbelievable.
And so it actually wasn't physiological, it was mental. And our bodies store. There's a book by Bessel van der Kolk. It's like this Bessel van der Kolk. It's like this famous book in the psychology world where it's called The Body Keeps a Score. The body stores trauma that is unprocessed. It's the whole nature of the book. If I do not process my trauma in a healthy way, the body will store it and it will stay somewhere.
When you say the body stores the trauma, is that what I understand is the subconscious mind? Is that what we're getting at here?
Yeah. The subconscious mind is always attuned
Yes.
to what is damaging and scary to our psyche and our way of being. And so
Yes.
for her, that cancer was so detrimental, not just physically, but mentally.
To me, that's just like having a panic attack. You ever tell someone who's having a panic attack, oh, just stop? Never works. Tell her, just stop thinking that
That's
your
right.
head needs
That's
to
what I'm
be.
saying. Like,
Yeah.
And so for me, like a lot of therapies, panic attack falls short because it's like, well, no one's ever died from a panic attack. But if you've ever had a panic attack, you think you're going to freaking die.
You might as well die at that point.
You might as well die in that point, right?
Right.
And so like you have to figure out what's going on with the brain. Like that's what, like those examples, like the boy that is now the leader of his team, that was first the outcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the therapist that couldn't even hold her head up because of the psychological trauma stored in her neck from her thyroid being removed and the cancer, now holding her head up proud, can go all day, no problem, no anxiety about the future. Like, to me, it's like, why does the world not know about this? And why is not everybody clamoring and fighting to get it? Because it really works. It really works. And I think we live in a society that wants a quick pill to mask the symptoms, but that doesn't necessarily fix the problem. It's a bridge that never ends. Mm-hmm. And this is a true bridge. This 70-year-old technology that has had a serious upgrade in the past 10 years is actually the real deal that people need to know about, that really can fix and change lives. And I've seen it happen firsthand. Like, if there's a big message that I communicate, it's not so much like, hey, what I can do can fix you. I think everybody's so unique. Like, I have a tool that can help a lot of people, but ultimately the reality is this, is that you have to actively fight and create your own character. How do we do that? Well, we got to filter out the ego, for one thing. The ego is the desire to perform, perfect, please, improve. We call that the 4 Ps. Mm-hmm. Okay? The 4 Ps operate out of fear, obligation, and guilt. Call it fogging, right? The fog will lead us into desiring to perform, perfect, please, improve to other people. And so that leads people astray, right? But how do we get a solid, rock solid integrity of actually healing ourselves? And what that creates is we have to establish integrity. And the big thing, I'm huge on integrity when it comes to treating my clients and healing them. It's like integrity is literally everything. The natural consequences of having integrity are fulfillment and peace. And we can all agree the cure for anxiety is peace. The cure for trauma is peace. The cure for ADHD, the cure for autism, all of that is peace. How do we have peace? We establish integrity. We stick to our values. We follow through despite the resistance. And then our life starts to be created, which we're made in God's image as a creator. We're supposed to be creators. We're not supposed to be reactors. God didn't make you in his image to be a reactor to life, to respond to life and like react like, oh yeah, I guess I should go along with the flow with my friends. They're all drinking and hanging out and having a good time and being reckless and wild. I should do that. No, you're supposed to be a creator. You're supposed to create your own world and your own life. And if you don't do that, you're missing the divine gift that God gave you. And I think that my patients first need to figure that out. And if that leads them to me, great. I'll help heal them along the way. I'll help guide them in the rest of the path. But if they're missing that ingredient, then guess what? I can't do much for them. It's like we have to go from a reactive to proactive life. People that are proactive, that try to create their life, that try to decide who they want to be and what they want to be, they always end up better mentally, physically, everything.
What you have been given, you want to give to other people.
Right.
Because you're grateful, because you have gratitude.
Yes. Oh,
That's who I know you to be.
you're saying that.
And that's who I see you are. So whether you're talking to a client that's suffering with anxiety or you're administering neurofeedback to a child, it's all because at the heart, you know who you are. You're someone who has been given much and you're grateful for it.
Right.
And when you have the ability to take the ego and all the self-centered stuff and just push it aside, what are you left with? I want the best for you, because it's self-forgetfulness. And I think that's one of the most wonderful, beautiful
term.
That it's just
Self-forgetfulness.
the term, right?
That's deep, Charlie. I like that.
That phrase has been just like an anchor for my life, because we could talk about ego all day. You could talk about ego forever in a million different ways. But at the end of the day, there has to be something that happens to you that makes you forget about you. And what is the thing that happened to you, Matt McKeithan, that made you forget about you? Was someone showing you unconditional love. And that began to flower and blossom into this garden of what we see right here in front of us right now.
And you could be that for somebody else.
Yes, it never ends.
It never ends.
The garden keeps seeding, right? The bees come and they pollinate.
Seeds.
That's what the seeds are.
Yeah.
Listen, I have a little bit of gray hair in my beard and in the sides of my head right
Yeah, a
now.
little more lately, I've noticed.
Over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah.
And my kids have been pretty
We'll have
bad.
to talk about it.
We'll talk offline. but the seeds, right?
Yeah.
We use that analogy so often, but what does that even mean?
Right.
You sowing yourself into the life, into the soul of another human being,
Right.
who then sows themselves into the life and the soul of another human being, and the garden of this world flourishes. So now, I can only vouch for you so much. But Matt McKeithan, how do you vouch for yourself? How do people find you? What do you tell anyone who's listening to you right now? Like what it is that they need, how to get a hold of you, and how to find out more information about who you are.
If anybody wants to find me or hear about me, or work with me, I do neurofeedback remotely and in person. In person is mainly for serious, pretty intense situations, but for general like anxiety, depression, and ADHD, I can do that remotely. So if anybody's interested in working with me, or just even has questions or wants to get to know me about my story or how I might be able to help them, they can go on my website at brainfitstudios.com. They can look me up there. They can book a 15-minute consult. It's free, and they can do it that way. I'm also on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook. And those are pretty much the best ways to get a hold of me. And the promise that I can make is that, when you come to me, I'm actually going to care, and I'm actually going to fight with every part of my soul to make sure that your life is better, because somebody did that for me. And like I feel obligated that it is my duty and it is my right to do that for somebody else.
I love you, man. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing. I
you.
appreciate every moment of this conversation. Really. Thank you so much for being here.
So I feel really grateful for you and just your general interest and your curiosity and your heart. You know, I really felt that through this process, and I'm just really grateful for it. So thank you for doing that, man.
I appreciate that.
I really appreciate you bringing that out in me.
Anytime. I appreciate that. You know, I love you, and I couldn't ask for better feedback than that. So that's great. Matt McKeithan, BrainFit Studios. Check it out. Thank you guys for watching the Echo podcast. Stay tuned for more.